What is going on, y'all? Robert Sykes coming at you with another AMA. So this one is all about how much protein can you consume, and will too much basically kick you out of ketosis? So great question, but before we dive into that, let's roll the intro. All right, so this question is brought to us by Steven, and Steven asks, hey Rob, so trying to gain weight in preparation for a contest to put on a few pounds of muscle mass, will too much protein knock me out of ketosis, even though I'm still technically within the proper keto ratio of 70-25-5 fat, protein, carbs? I'm currently eating 4,000 calories a day and about 250 grams of protein a day, and I weigh about 200 pounds. Training at 3 days on, 1 day off, PPL. Thanks, love your podcast and the book. Well, thank you for reading the book and the podcast. Listen to the podcast, Stephen. Great question. All right, so the answer is it depends, okay? It's not necessarily going to kick you out of, it may very well kick you out of ketosis, but that's not necessarily going to hinder your body's ability to become fat adapted if you are already fat adapted. Let me unpack that a little bit. So if someone is not following a ketogenic diet and they automatically go to a very high protein diet, before their body has upregulated those metabolic pathways in order to make use and be efficient with using fat as an energy source, both dietary fat and stored fat, you're not really going to make the most of your energy supply. So a lot of people make the mistake of defaulting to a ton of protein right off the bat and not ample dietary fat. There's a commonly held belief that you can't overconsume protein and that you should only use fat as a lever, and if you have fat to lose, then don't consume dietary fat. And there is some truth to that, but that's also a really big oversimplification, I think. If you are not yet fat adapted and you strip your body of your energy source, being carbs, if you are not yet fat adapted, and you automatically go very high protein without hardly any dietary fat, you're not going to feel great. You're likely going to deviate, and you're not going to optimize your performance from an energy standpoint, because protein is not a great substrate for energy, as I've said on multiple podcasts. You've likely heard me say that. So in your case, being 200 pounds and consuming about 250 grams of protein, I would not worry about that amount of protein. I am 180 pounds and consume between 180 and 220 grams of protein. So not too far from what you're consuming. Now, if you are already fat adapted and you have been following a ketogenic low carbohydrate diet for quite some time, your body's efficient at using fat for energy, both stored and dietary fat, and you feel great, then I wouldn't really worry about it. Now, with the higher protein intake, you may in fact see a drop in ketone measurements, like if you're doing a blood test or a breathalyzer test, or you're doing any type of ketone test, you may see those ketone numbers start to dip with the higher protein consumption. Also in the context of the higher calories, which 4,000 calories is a pretty good amount of calories, that is okay. That doesn't necessarily mean you are not in ketosis anymore. You are likely going to see a dip in ketones with a caloric surplus and with higher protein. That doesn't mean you are any less fat adapted necessarily. When I'm in a caloric surplus, when I'm in a building phase, when I'm trying to push the protein, I'll see my ketone numbers drop oftentimes below the 0.5 threshold. I don't worry about it because I'm not consuming any carbohydrates in that context. So it's not like my body is forgetting how to use fat and ketones for fuel. Now, there is a point of diminishing returns with protein. If you have X number of calories to work with in a day, anything beyond that is going to contribute to an unnecessary caloric surplus and an unnecessary body fat gain. You have so many calories to work with. So once you've reached your protein requirements and you are kind of aggressive in those protein requirements, as I would recommend being if your goal is to put on more lean tissue, then there is a point of diminishing returns in which any X number of calories that you have to work with beyond protein that is not partitioned towards energy is just energy you're leaving on the table. So you're not really making the most of your energy sources. So that's kind of hard to verbalize and assimilate here. But basically, if I've got X number of protein and I'm being aggressive with that protein intake, as I would imagine 250 grams for you is, if you have the option of either consuming more dietary fat or consuming more protein, as I said earlier, protein's not a great substrate for energy, so you might as well make that up with more dietary fat. 250 grams is ample protein for, I don't know what your body fat percentage is and stuff like that, but I would imagine 250 grams is totally ample protein for you based off of your stats to build, recover, and, improve your amino acid profile and preserve your muscle tissue. So you might as well take that extra caloric allotment and partition it towards dietary fat, so you've got more energy for your training, so that you can maximize your training potential, increase progressive overload principles, increase intensity of your training, and ideally create more stimulus for your body to have the need to build more muscle tissue. That's what I would recommend personally. So hopefully that answers your question, Stephen. Thank you so very much for the question. For those of y'all that do not know, if you submit a well-thought-out question via the link in the description below, and I use your question in one of these AMA videos, I will send you some free keto bricks of your choosing. Stephen, you requested some coconut cream keto bricks, so I've got those in the mail headed your way. Thank y'all very much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.